Welcome to a new tutorial. In this one we will be importing a model and animation we created earlier in Blender. We will control the animation in Unity through the Animator controller. We'll use the state machine to define a Boolean function to switch the animation on and off. And then we'll write a little script that we can attach to a button. So when clicking on the button, we can start and stop the animation. But that's enough said, let's dive in. And we're back in Unity, where we created this user interface in the previous tutorial. Now we're gonna bring in the model. So we got the assets folder selected. We click on the right-hand mouse button. Let's create this folder, create folder. And let's call this model, or actually call this models. I'm just gonna enter it. And we can drag and drop the model inside. Let me just grab hold of the folder. So this is the Blender file that we created with the armature and the animation. And this is the FBX file. I'm just gonna grab it and I'm just gonna drop it right here. And I don't need this anymore, so let's move it. This is the robot inserted into Unity in the models folder. And if I click on the arrow, you can see all the different parts that make up the robot. We need these parts as they all move individually, and I can click on a single model and you get all the information on the right hand side. So you can check, there's the information about the model, you can check how many vertices are there, you can see the size and you can optimize it, and as well we got the animation included. With the animation there is one special thing which is called the loop time, which we will activate. And by activating it, it means that it will go through the animation again and again. Let's make this larger so you can see what is happening. If I were to click on the animation, you can see that the animation has been imported correctly. We can see this being recorded at 24 frames per second. And the length is about 20 seconds. But if I were to include this in Unity right now, without the loop time activated, it would stop after 20 seconds. And then it would just stop dead in its track. If we want this to be continuous, we can go to the animation. We can say, and let me just make this smaller again. We can activate the loop time. And we need to go all the way to the bottom. And you don't need to forget this, is click on the apply button. And now I got the loop time activated. So as soon as I got this installed in Unity and I activate the animation, it will loop through the 20-second cycle and then restart again. So those were the individual parts. If you click on the robot, then you get the same aspects on the top. You can check the model. You can, if for some reason you included a camera or a light, you can make it invisible by just these tick boxes. You can check the animation, which we just did, and you can see what's happening and you can see how long it is. So all the different things are included with the model, and you can check the individual ones. Now that we have the model and the animation, let's drop it into the scene. We can just, let me just close this. We can just drop it into the scene or in the hierarchy. That's the same thing. Let's drop it in the scene. As you can see, it's very small. I got it selected on the left hand side and I can see its position is 100 by 538 and minus 1193. I want this to be at 0, 0, 0. So it's all the way on the bottom. And it's extremely small as it's rendered through the camera. And the canvas, which we're looking at right now, is rendered on top of it. So let's just select the robot, press the F button, and there we are. So this is the robot. Nicely placed in the scene, and we want a view with the camera. So we're just going to select the camera, and at the moment you can see it's positioned nicely in the middle of the view. If it's not done so, you can move the camera around and you can move it backward and forward, but let's just keep it like this. If you have troubles, you can always go to Game Object and go to Align with View. And that sets the camera as well. In our case, it's fine. And let me just reselect the camera again. In game view, you get a larger view, but you need to swap back and forth between the two scenes. What you can also do is take the game view and just drop it in here. So you get a split screen. If you like to work that way, that's fine. So you can do it like this, that you get a better view and you can zoom in and you can see what you're doing. If the main camera is bothering you, just right-hand mouse button and collapse, and then it's gone as well. And this may make it easier to reposition the robot a little bit. I like it to be next to each other, so like this, and we got the scene view. So we got the camera set up, and I'm just going to make this larger, so expand, so this is fine. If I press on play, nothing would happen. So even though the robot is imported with the animation, I may want to include a second robot where I don't want the animation, so I need to specifically define where I want the animation to be included. I can add the animation to the robot through the use of a component. So I got the robot selected on the left hand side. All the components are located in the inspector. And we want to add the animation. So what we want to do is type in, this is enough, anim. We can add an animation, and that means we can create one in Unity itself. We don't need to do it as we've created one in Blender already and we imported it. So we are gonna add the animator, and this allows us to control the animation, when to start and when to stop. So let's add it. Animator is added. Now we need to head back to the model, and we have the animation right here. Grab it and drag it to the animator controller and just release it. And now we got it activated. So what we can do is start the game, and then we can see the animation plays right away. So what we've done, we added the animator component, and then the animation starts. There's two things we want to change. First of all, I want this to face the camera. This is a nice view, but I want to rotate the robot a little bit. And we want to control the animation, as we want to click a button to start and stop it. So take a look. First thing we want to do is rotate the robot. So I got it selected again, and I got all the modules or components on the right hand side. And I want to rotate this so to face it toward the camera. So I rotate it over 90 degrees. So just to give you a better view, camera's here, the robot is facing the camera. And if I start it right now, you can see that the robot is facing the camera, and this is done to get the most of the animation. But as you can see, it slides a little bit out of place at the start. So let me move the camera up a little bit. And we can do it like this. And we can move the camera up, and there we go. So let's build the component that controls the animation. To control the animation, we need to use a state machine in the animator menu. So we added the animator already. So let's just select the robot. This is the animator, and we want to add this one. So let's go to Window, and let's go to Animation. And here we have the option Animator, and this is a new one. So it opens up a new tab. Then it brings in the animator, and this is controlling what is happening with the animation. It's also called a state machine, and what it shows you is that upon entry it will go to the armature directly, and it keeps on playing. So just take a look at this, and I need to swap back to the animator. You can see it has entered the entry state, it has moved over to the armature, and we can see the slider and the position of the animation. Once it's completed, it will go back to the beginning as we have the loop activated. But we want to control this arrow here, and this is done through a Boolean operation. The first thing we want to do is control when the animation starts. So we don't want it upon entry. We want to create an idle state. So we're going to click the right hand mouse button, create the state, and click on empty. And we got a new state. And let's call this idle. So this is like a waiting state. And we want to make this the default. So it's upon entry, it will go to a default state. Then it waits until it's been told what to do. And we want it to go to armature. So we're going to click on the right hand mouse button again. Then make a transition to the armature. And what we want is make another transition to go back. So now we got a controlling method. Let me just zoom in. Upon entry, it will go to the idle state. It will wait until we tell it what to do. If I play the animation right now, If I go back, you can see we have entered the program. It has moved on to the idle state and directly goes to the armature. So we've not really changed anything. We need to control this arrow, which we're going to do right now. Let's stop the program here. Then we are going to parameters and we are just going to add a new parameter. And this is going to be a Boolean. And we say there's going to be trigger animation. So we got the Boolean has a name. We are going to the right hand side and it says list is empty, but we're going to make a condition. So when the trigger animation is true, the animation can be played. We can have the second one, which is obviously also the trigger animation. But in this case, we want the condition to be false and then it turns back. So now we got a condition implemented on this state. It will go to the entry state. It will move to idle and it will wait until the trigger animation is true. So if you play the animation right now, and let me head back. So now it's waiting in the idle state until this condition becomes true, which I can make it. Now I got it true. You saw the line move and now you see that the armature animation is being played. So now the animation is being played. And until the time this condition is true, it will keep on playing the animation. If I make it false, it will snap out of the animation and return back to the idle state, which is now waiting for the condition to become true again. Making it true, starts the animation, and then false, plays the animation and drops right back. It takes a long time before it returns to the idle state. And this has to do with the setting. So when we want to snap out of it, it says has exit time. And that means that the animation has played through the exit time. In this case, 98% of the animation before returning to the idle state. We can say no exit time. And if we now make it true, you can see it drops right into the animation. Make it false, snaps right out of it. So we just deactivated the has exit time. So we can start and stop it on the spot. So that is working fine. I can play the animation by clicking this button. Then the animation plays in the scene. But I want to control this. And this we can do through a little bit of scripting. So let's take a look at the script that we can create to control this animation or these two booleans actually. The trigger animation needs to be controlled by a little script. So what we now want to do is create the script to control the animation. And for this reason, I would suggest to create a scripts folder in the assets folder. We have created one already with the previous tutorial. We have the calculation script right here. Let's create a new one that's going to start and stop the animation. So right hand mouse button, go to create and go to C# script. And we call this toggle animation. And we can open this and it will provide us with the basic and standard script. And now we need to generate our script. We can use Chat GPT for this. So let's open this up. The thing with Chat GPT and generating code is asking it the right question. Then it gives us back the right answer. If we state the question incorrectly, we may get feedback with incorrect information. In this case, we want Unity. We want a start and stop animation by Boolean function. And we want a button click. Otherwise, it's just going to give me information about starting and stopping an animation, which is going to be a different function than the one I'm looking for. Let's generate the code and I'll just let it run through for a little bit. Once it's done, you can see that the code is here. So we got the basic code. We got the Animator controller, which is the class. In our case, it's toggle animation. We got the Animator, which we added to the robot. Then we got the Boolean. In this case, it's called isAnimationPlaying, but we gave it a different name, but we can change it. We want to get the component and we want to toggle the animation. So this is very good. This is what we can use. I can copy the code right here. I can also use copy code and then I can paste it in directly, but I want to change the name. So I'm going to store it inside of a notepad folder and then I'm going to reuse it inside of the scripting. And we're back at the scripting in Unity and let's reuse the code we just generated. What we want to do is we want the animator component and we want this to be public so we can drag and drop the component that we created on the robot onto the slot. Otherwise, I need to reference this in the start function as it says in the scripting. But by making this animator component public, I can use a drag and drop function. So let's call this animator. And let me just type this correctly. Animator. And let's call this animator with small letters. So that's the local name. Then we got a Boolean called movement. And there I got my variables. I got a start and an update function. I am not going to use the update function as it is quite heavy on resources. And I know exactly when someone's going to push a button. That's what we're going to use it for. So we are going to use a click button event. What we want is add a little bit of code which was not generated by Chat GPT, but this is easier to use, especially when you're using a large amount of scripts. Sometimes you remove components and you have no idea where the error may come from. So in this case, we are going to check if the animator, and I need to type this better, does not exist. So equals to null, not a single, otherwise it sets it to null. I want to check it if it exists. And if it does not exist, I would like a error message. And let me just call this here. And I'm going to call this, and I removed one bracket too much. Always be careful. There we go. And let me just indent this. I want debug.log. And I would like a message. And I say animator component is not assigned. And this is just a reference for me, or for us actually. If we remove a component by accident, we know where to look for and how to correct it easily. So we got the start function updated a little bit. And what we want to do now is we want to create a function and we call it public void. And let's call it trigger animation. And it should not be the same name as the public class. So I should not call it toggle animation, but call it trigger animation. So that's the function. And then we're going to insert almost the same thing as that was generated. In this case, we're going to say the movement equals to the opposite of movement. So we're going to inverse the animation, stop or play. Then on the next line, we are going to say the animator and set the Boolean. And now we're going to look at the trigger. And let's just look at the name, trigger animation. Let's head back. So we need to type in trigger animation. And what we want is this to be in movement. And let's close it. And that's our script. In Unity, we can select our robot. And we see that the transform component is here as well as the animator component. We can head over to our scripts folder and we can simply drag and drop the script on here. And since we made the animator publicly available, it's a drag and drop field. So what we can do is we can grab the asset that we have in the hierarchy, because this is the one that we want the animation to be assigned to. We just grab it, hold the mouse button down and drag it all the way over here, drop it inside of the animator. You can also push the little round icon on the right hand side and it gives you the options here. You can make a selection, but now we got this added. What it does now is Still waiting for the idle state, and now we want to press a button. So what we want to do now is pressing the button, activating this Boolean function, heading back to the scene. We are going to the graphical user interface. I'm pressing the F button, and I want to assign it to this button particularly. So button animation. Then all the different components which are assigned to this button are shown on the right hand side. We dealt with most of them in the previous tutorial, but what we want to do now is on-click event, which is generated by Unity automatically. We are going to add an on-click event. We are just going to drop in the robot. Then Unity knows which components are present. One of the components obviously is our script. The script is here. So it's a game object. It has a transform component. It has an animator component and a toggle animation. Now inside of this toggle animation script, we need to find our function, and that's called trigger animation. So this button now has a reference to the robot component and then to the animator component, and it has access to the Boolean function. If we start the game view now, you can see that the animation is still in idle state, but once I press this button, the animation starts playing, and as soon as I touch the button again, it will stop dead in its track. There you go, it snaps right back to the start of the operation. But that's what we want. We can also have it move slowly back to its original position, but that's something we can do in a later tutorial. In this case, we have just created a trigger event for the animation. Pressing the button will start and stop the animation. And that's the first button that we have assigned a function to. Let's move on to the next tutorial and create the second function for the second button.